When you say 50-50, that means that 50% of our health care money is being squandered on overhead.
Right. It's
Yeah.
stuff that other countries spend at the most 5% on.
And that 45%, imagine what we could do with that, how many people could be taken care of.
Right.
What do you think, Dennis,
Well,
about
I'm going to take a dig at the Progressive Party, because the Progressive Party is not really progressive. They're just endorsing the Democrats, and the Democrats are clueless to what's really happening right now. If you really want to talk about progressive, we are the progressives. This movement is the progressive movement, because we're offering you an alternative. The reason this single-payer health care is not going to work is because, well, right now, $3 billion, it takes $3 billion a day to run the federal government. It's insane. We're borrowing money from Korea, China, and Japan just to keep ourselves going. The GDP for the U.S. government ratio is nearly at 100%, and that level is the kind of signal that sends alarms at what happened in Greece. 1.5 trillion this fiscal year, that's how much we're going to borrow, and as well as another 1.5 trillion next year. So if we're under the delusion that we're going to have single-payer health care by staying in the union, it's completely insane. It's not going to happen. How it could happen is if Vermont becomes its own independent republic and takes that $1.5 billion, Vermont's pro rata share of the U.S. Defense Department budget every year, and then the people of Vermont can decide what they want to do with that money, divert it to Montpelier, and then decide what we want to do if we want to have health care for everybody. What I would like to see done is to model the Swiss system. The Swiss system is one of the best health care systems in the world. It works. They have most of their people covered. And they have the choice of over 400 insurance companies. And I think we need to look at that. They're doing something right. I mean, it wouldn't hurt for us to just use that as a model to go by. And again, if you're progressive and you're voting Democrat, you're clueless, because you're not going to get your single-payer health care. It's not going to happen. We're the ones that can bring that about. This movement, if you want to get involved, you want single-payer health care, you want a chance for our kids to go to college, you want to put our children first, this is the movement you have to be in. You have to vote the Steele Garritano ticket and send a message. And we keep building this movement because this is where it's at. It's money. And the United States empire is a sinking ship. It's a Titanic. It's going down, people. It's over. The party's over. And there's three types of people on the Titanic. You have the status quo politicians, which is your progressives, your Democrats, and your Republicans. And they're all going, you know, hey, this is the Titanic. It's not going down. It's not going to sink. I'm going back to the bar for a drink. Then you got the people on the boat who say, you know, they know something's wrong inside. They know. Their gut feeling tells them something's wrong, but they don't know what to do about it. And then there's us in the Second Vermont Republic. We're saying, we're the lifeboat. Get on the boat. Get your stuff. Let's go. The thing is sinking. Let's create a new way of life, a different metaphor for the rest of the United States to show us how we can live localized, decentralized lives and that we will thrive. That is 200 countries in the world. 50 of them are smaller than Vermont, and some of those 50 are the richest in the world. We feel that Vermont would thrive as an independent republic. When you speak of the movement, the Second Vermont Republic, you're really talking about a movement or a group inspired by Thomas Naylor's book on secession. Mm-hmm. And the group includes yourself and Peter and also the candidates for the state senate, right? Including myself, I'm running for the state senate from Chittenden County. So we're all part of this movement, but we're not all agreed on on everything. For instance, economic theory, we might have some differences. Mm-hmm. I lived in Canada for 2.5 years, and I had the healthcare system both in Quebec and in Ontario. So I know what single payer is all about. And it worked wonderfully for me in Quebec and in Ontario. I was able to see a doctor, any doctor of my choice, mm-hmm. and get services at a hospital, blood tests, and it was all for free. I didn't have to pay for anything, and I didn't have to wait either. I thought the system there was absolutely wonderful. Well, that's good, Terry, but the problem is that Sanders says he has to get an exception from the federal government to do single payer in Vermont. We have to ask for permission. I mean, why? Are we not free people? I mean, if you want single payer in Vermont, we're going to have to get out of the union and stop spending this money, sending the $1.5 billion on this foreign policy that's wasting our money. Is that what you want? Is that what the progressives really want? Then make it happen. Join our movement and let's get going.
Well, progressive, for me, progressive means socialist. And I think
It can
traditionally...
mean different things too, I think. You know, progressive to me seems like somebody who's against the war.
Your definition of progressive is a little different.
Well, I think progressive can mean multiple meanings. It's people who are actually thinking of different ideas. It could come from the libertarians myself. I mean, those things could happen in different ways. Progressive is just different ways of thinking. I don't think it means just socialism. I think it just means opening the box and thinking outside of the box of how we can solve our problems. That's the key. That's what this movement's about. It's about thinking outside of the box and creating creative solutions so that we can solve our own problems in Vermont and have a better future for our children.
But even if all of us are elected now in November, we're not going to have enough votes in the state government to do what you want to do. So there's going to be at least 2 more years.
Well, it's all part about building the movement. I mean, we're taking the first steps by, yourself, Pete and I, we're stepping out and standing up and running and starting to gather support and starting to speak out and ridicule the status quo politicians because they don't get it. They still don't get it that the system is, the United States government's going down. It's a sinking ship. There's no money. I mean, look, here's what we got. In 2012, we're going to have a 2012 to 2014 general fund shortfall of $313 million. Education fund shortfall for 2012, $60 to $100 million. There isn't any money for anything anymore unless we're willing to take charge of our own futures and take that $1.5 billion back and do what we want to do with it.
And you haven't even mentioned so far, the crisis in energy, the peak oil, which could have catastrophic effect on our ability to live the lives we've been living if, in fact, and this may not happen next year, but it's obvious that that the U.S. government and other powerful governments are expanding their military to be able to have control over those areas where the oil is, so that it's sort of a last-ditch effort to, we're going to get as much of the resources as we can get before they're depleted. But that this is going to have a major factor on how the country is run and on why we need to turn to local solutions to be able to solve our problems.
Absolutely, but the Progressive Party, that's where they're not thinking. They wouldn't let you run as a progressive, right? Because you're an open secessionist, right?
They voted 5-4 against endorsing me for my candidacy for the state senate.
Oh.
Is that progressive thinking? I don't think so. They're still inside the box.
I lived in Quebec. As I mentioned, I lived in Quebec for 2 years. And I was there at a time when René Lévesque was leading the Parti Québécois and they were having referendums for independence. So I know what this involves, and it's a long-term haul. As you say, we have to bring up the issue and people have to talk about it.
We have to confront the politicians, the moral authority of the politicians, because it's happening. I've been doing it in the debates, and they can't. When we don't have any money, when you bring that up, Peter Shumlin gets up there and waves his magic wand like, vote for me, everything's going to be okay. That's not true. It's not. There isn't any money for anything anymore. That's what we have to come to realize. The early educators debate, they're worried about the programs of supporting the people to be able to continue with their small businesses. It's not going to be there. Why do you think Doobie doesn't show up at all to those things? Because he's going to cut it. It's all gone. And Peter wants to just reduce. Peter Shumlin wants to reduce the prison from the small-time offenders. Well, okay, that's great, but that's maybe 30 million. I mean, it's chump change. It's not enough. I mean, what could we really do for our children with the $1.5 billion? Vermont's pro rata share of the U.S. Defense Department budget. I mean, that's the 800-pound gorilla in the room that the Democrats and Republicans are not talking about.
Well, we do all agree that the war should end. And with that $1.5 billion, we can certainly do a lot.
But how do you bring it to an end? Washington's not listening anymore. They're owned, operated, controlled by corporate America, Wall Street, and the Israeli lobby. There's nothing you can do. We have to do it here.
That brings up an interesting
The
question.
Santa Claus bags coming back with Leahy and Sanders are going to be empty soon.
Some people have suggested that the
Yeah,
governor...
they got F-35s at $115 million a pop.
Some people have suggested that the governor would have the authority to order the state militia, Vermont State Guard, home from Afghanistan. As governor, would you do that?
I would do that. Now, whether it will be successful is another thing. Governor Chittenden tried to do that, and I think Madeline Kunin tried to do that. They weren't successful. What's going to be successful is getting the political will of the people behind our movement and becoming an independent republic. And when the people say, hey, we've had enough, we're out, then we bring our troops home. That is the only way it's going to work. But a governor can start talking about it. So whoever gets elected governor, if they're really anti-war, then they should start talking about bringing home the Vermont National Guard.